Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Valerie Hope, and welcome to Time to Come Alive. This is our opportunity every week to connect with amazing people, to become even more conscious about yourself and your place in the world, and also to create something of value and contribute. I'm so excited to introduce my guest this morning, which I will in just a moment. I like to keep people in suspense. And I also have such a blessing to be able to have such meaningful conversations. And I encourage you, if you have time right now, to share this with your on your social media, please do, because this will encourage you to have meaningful conversations with the people around you. You might also find that if you're watching this in the recording, to share this with the people in your life that mean something to you. You might find that some information is helpful for others. I just want to encourage you to engage and connect with as many people as you can. Now, before we jump into our topic today, I just want you to take a moment, take a deep breath, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just to pause and listen to this conversation. I just want to prepare you a little bit. First of all, our body, although it belongs to us, right, because we obviously use it, move it, do things with it, it's also a separate entity, right? It has its own sensations, it has its own way of communicating, and I just want you to get present right now to how your body might be communicating. Just think for a second, what is your body needing from you today? Just take a deep breath and see if you can sense it. Could it be that it needs rest? Might it be that your body is asking for nutrition? Perhaps your body is just needing movement, stimulation of some sort. See how present you can get to what your body needs from you today. And as we have this conversation, I just want you all to realize if there's anything that changes between the start of our conversation and the end. And if so, consider that taking in whatever your body is telling you to do and honoring it. Okay. Now, I want to introduce you to my very special guest. This amazing woman and I have been friends for almost 20 years. Oh my goodness. Sometimes talking about numbers makes me a little uncomfortable. But I want to introduce to you all Lexie Okeke. Lexie and I met almost 20 years ago when we both worked at the Dallas Regional Chamber of Commerce here in Dallas, Texas, and became fast friends. And, Lexie, you're one of my favorite people to have. The kind of conversations that I have on this show, you and I have on a regular. Yeah, truly. Yeah, we've done some traveling. We got an opportunity to do some cultural activities, dancing, you name it. So you're both my deep fun friend. You're both my deep friend and also my fun friend. So I so appreciate that. And I know that you are very accomplished as well, and you're now in charge of community strategy for the Salesmanship Club in Dallas, and I know you've been doing some amazing work with them. And anything else you'd like to share with people about who you are and where you're from?
Sure. So I am Lexie Okeke. I am from Dallas, Texas, born in Beaumont, so I'm definitely a Texas girl, born and bred. And I am passionate about our community. I'm passionate about helping others. And so hopefully that shows up in my relationships and also in the work that I do. And of course, with being focused on others, there's certainly a great side to that. And then there are also challenges that can present because of it. And I imagine today's talk will probably talk about some of the challenges.
We can talk about it all. So before we jump in, Lexie, I'm curious about why you said yes to being on this program today to me.
Because we've been friends for 20 years, and if I said no, you'd be like, "Now, Lexie, why don't you want to share?"
Not necessarily.
No, I feel pretty confident. No, I think, I recognize that I've had experiences, I've been through things in my life that when people ask me to kind of share and talk about what the experience is like and kind of the lessons learned, that I feel a certain, it's an opportunity really to, again, give back. I mean, that is my why overall for my life. And so when you asked, I was like, absolutely, I'll do it. I'll share.
Yay. And I do appreciate your opening up this way. It so happened that, when you and I spoke initially about you coming on the program, that there are a couple of other people who you're very closely connected to who've also been guests.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Maggie Abenshine and also Michelle Kinder. So it's been like leading up. I'm like, of course, Lexie has to be on the show. How is that possible? Because we're all so intricately connected. Can you share a little bit about how the three of you are connected? So for those of you who have been watching and you saw those particular sessions, it'd be helpful for them to see what the triad's all about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have, I truly consider it the privilege of being on the team staff at the Salesmanship Club of Dallas. And the AT&T Byron Nelson. And my work is very much so focused on the community, and that looks like a lot of different things. That's certainly working with the mayor, council, city staff regarding the work that we're doing in Southern Dallas, but also working internally with staff. And so Michelle Kinder is the former executive director of Momentous Institute, which is the nonprofit that is owned and operated by the Salesmanship Club of Dallas. If you're not familiar with Momentous Institute, shameless plug, please go to their website. Incredible work around the social emotional health of children and families. And then Maggie is the former communications director for Momentous Institute and the Salesmanship Club of Dallas. So because of the timing and the work that I was doing when I first came on board the team, very much so involved working closely with both of them. And so I love them. I am Team Michelle, Team Maggie all the way.
Ooh, I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that. And they are your biggest fans as well. I think we're all part of the Lexie, the admirers of Lexie Club. So
I love it. I appreciate it.
Of course. Lexie, I know that one of the main reasons when you and I started talking about being on the program is to talk about your journey, right? And specifically the part of your journey that started 5 years ago. So I'd love to go back to that time. And I saw you posted something on Facebook. I think it was yesterday or maybe a couple of days ago. So I'm like, oh, how timely is this?
I know. And I didn't even think about it. Absolutely.
It's timely. Uncanny. So tell us what you posted on Facebook, and maybe we'll go into a little bit of the backstory so that people get a sense of where this is coming from.
Sure. So I did this post 5 years ago that actually was a month after I experienced a stroke. And that post was kind of the encapsulation of everything that had happened over the last month. It was the, oh my God, Lexie is having a stroke, and all that means to myself individually and to my family and support system, but also it was, okay, what does recovery look like when you go through something unexpected, very critical and serious, and what does your future look like? And so that's really what that email was about. I'm so glad I did it. I didn't think about it at the time, but it was an opportunity to almost create a time capsule to say, okay, this happened, summary of what happened, what it looked like, but then also to really put in place while I was in the middle of recovery, to put in place what I wanted recovery to look like, what I wanted Lexie 2.0 really to look like. So very, very thankful for that post because it's definitely a touchstone and a reminder to continue to do the work necessary for Lexie to be as healthy as she can be.
It's interesting to understand the presence of mind that you had to have in that moment to put what you put together. So anyone that's a friend of Lexie's will see this on her timeline. So feel free to go check it out and see. You might gain some friends after this.
Right, which is
might
totally
be really.
I think
I need to see this post.
Right, and I think it's a public post. So yeah, feel free to add me as a friend. Yeah.
Excellent. So for those that may or may not get to the post, let's break this down for them a bit.
Sure.
So talk to us about 5 years ago. What was happening? Tell us about the moment of the stroke and whatever you were able to share from that.
Sure. So 5 years ago was actually an incredible time in my life. I had a year previously started my own consulting business in the nonprofit space. I had acquired a client that actually matched my previous employer's salary, so a pretty big client, doing some amazing things for them, and really just working to kind of create my own space in this nonprofit world and to continue to do good things, but hopefully with multiple clients. At the same time, my family was experiencing a huge celebration. My brother had just been inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. We went up to Canada to do this huge celebration. This big event that I had designed for one of my clients had just been completed, and I was exhausted. I knew I was tired, but if you get to know me, Valerie knows this, I kind of just press on through, and at that time would ignore things. The weekend after we got back from Canada, I had been saying, family, we need to, watch our physical health. And so I gathered my sister-in-law and nieces for a 5K. We weren't going to run it because we weren't ready. But I said, let's go out there. We can walk it. We're tired, but we can at least say we got it done. I walked, I can look at it now, probably no more than half a mile, and started getting incredibly nauseous, actually throwing up, which is not something that I ever do. I've never, maybe once in my life, had thrown up, and just really, really sick. I am so thankful to God that, one, my sister-in-law was with me. She's not impressed by me. She loves me, but she's not impressed. So she's going to do what she knows is in my best interest and ignore whatever, walls or whatever boundaries I may put up. Two, the other thing was there was a Garland police officer and paramedics that were nearby. And so there was an immediate response to figure out what was going on. They took my vitals, saw that my blood pressure was through the roof. When I say through the roof, I'm talking over 200 for the top score, which is absolutely positive. In fact, I think it was 230, 240, critical level. And the first responder said, either you take her to the hospital or we take her to the hospital. And at that point, my sister-in-law kind of jumped in and said, we're going to manage this. In the sense that we're going to do, what needs to be done in order to take care of her. Truth be told, if it had been just me, I would have just gone up to my bed and, unbeknownst to me, died. But my sister-in-law, being the amazing person that she is, she was like, we're going to the hospital. The emergency room folks then applied a drip, did all the things that they know to do in order to get my blood pressure down, but it was not coming down, which was when I was checked into ICU. All I remember literally is getting in the bed, them starting to hook me up, and then literally I was unconscious for the next week. And that really began a very serious health fight that my family had to fight.
Wow. Whew. I'm getting some chills just even talking about it. And I remember I may have seen you maybe a week or two after this happened, I think, in the hospital. So a couple of things I just want to go back to. One is, so you're exhausted. You clearly knew you were exhausted, have all this stuff going on with your family. And then you guys do a 5K. This is a kind of superhuman.
I do not recommend this. No,
I don't recommend it. I got that part. I got the part that you don't recommend it. I just thought I was like exhausted, and 5K just don't seem to be in the same sentence for most people, I would imagine. But that's okay. And then you also said something really interesting about your sister-in-law. You mentioned that she will just do whatever is best for you, no matter ignoring any kind of walls or boundaries you put up. So what was that about? Did you put up some walls or boundaries around being taken care of by her at the time, or can you remember?
Well, yeah. I think I do that around everybody. Not intentionally, but I think it's not this superhuman thing, but I'm so used to taking care of myself that my first response to someone wanting to take care of something for me is, I've got it, don't worry about it. It's all good. I'll just do this and it'll be okay. And so that was my response. But very, very thankful. I mean, Tracy and I have an incredible relationship. So there's safety, in me there was safety in me relinquishing that control, because that's really what that was about for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had to listen to her.
Yeah. And it's interesting, when we talk about something so intimate as your well-being, and mm-hmm. clearly at that time, it was obvious, it was evident that you just were not feeling well, that you were not doing well. And when mm-hmm. you said that the way you would have handled it, right, being in control of yourself would have just been go to bed, go get some rest, and that mm-hmm. would have killed you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Literally would have killed you, because you would have never known that your blood pressure was contributing to all of this other stuff.
Correct. Wow. And okay, I will say this too, because those that have experienced high blood pressure or a stroke or anything like that, there are symptoms. So there are certainly things that I ignored. My body, as it relates to blood pressure, was giving me signals, but I didn't give them the weight that it needed to. Specifically what happens with me, and not everybody's body reacts the same way, but I do get headaches. And so I was ignoring it. I thought it was just headaches. I thought it was just pressure. It was the intensity of everything that was going on around me. But yeah, I know better now.
Clearly. I'm also curious about, so you said your family then had to go through this journey, right, mm-hmm, in your health as well. So it wasn't just you, although you are fairly self-sufficient from what you described, very independent. Mm-hmm. What was going on with your family during this time? So now you're hospitalized, unconscious for about a week. What was happening?
Sure. So, it's interesting, the perspective that I have versus, the perspective that my family has. And one of the awesome things about this journey is kind of, you hear about some things right away, and then other things, it takes a while to hear. It was a difficult time for my family because I had lived this life of independence. I'm a single female, no kids. The things that they needed in order to navigate through this thing were not readily available to them. Whereas Lexie's, sure. At the time, actually, because I was just starting my business, I didn't have insurance, but does Lexie have insurance? People are calling. We can't get into Lexie's telephone. Are there any other health concerns that we should know about? Of course, they know allergies and health history, but, does Lexie have a primary care physician? All of those things, not intentionally, but they were in the dark about. And so they're basically having to then jump into this very critical situation blindly, and piece together not only my care and ensuring my life is saved, but also ensuring and talking to all the doctors. It's a team. When you have a stroke, it's not just, a primary care physician. You've got primary care. You've got the nephrologist who's watching your kidney. You've got brain doctors. You've got you have a team of about 4 to 5, doctors with these big degrees behind them that you've now got to get on the same page with them as far as the words they use, the medicines they're talking, and that's one aspect of it. But then you also have the other aspect of, does this doctor think of Lexie and care for Lexie in a way that is going to ensure not just her life, but her quality of life? And anyone that has experience with the medical profession will understand that that can be quite a journey. That can be quite a journey. It gets intense. It gets intense.
So this was the perspective of your family, that they had all these, not only were they, I'm sure, devastated and concerned about you and your welfare and what was happening, but also all the practical matters of your life to manage those and figuring out how to do so. You mentioned that you had a different perspective. What was that?
I was out like a light. I was out. And so,
was it a coma? It wasn't a coma. Was it considered?
They never used that terminology in my medical records. But it was a week, and I typically, when I talk about it, say unconscious. I was out. And so what I talk about is, there's the emotional and there's the practical and there's the emotional that's happening with my family that I'm not experiencing. So when I talk about my perspective, I certainly have to have empathy and understand their perspective while experiencing my perspective, and then trying to think all of this as we walk out the journey. So my perspective during that critical time, I'm out. But there are things that actually, they're really funny and interesting stories about that time that I still managed to assert my personality. But so I don't know, it's this weird dichotomy of needing to be empathetic with my family because they are now experiencing a certain level of trauma, while at the same time trying to work through, manage, and recover from my trauma.
That's interesting. Knock on wood, I've not had any personal experience with this, but I've not really thought about how someone else's illness would contribute to family trauma. But
totally.
From what you described, yeah, absolutely. There's no question that was.
Can you imagine
traumatic.
A mother having to think about burying their child?
Absolutely.
I think that would be absolutely a definition of trauma.
Absolutely.
And thank God I survived. But, that's something to think about.
Yeah. So was there a conversation between you and your family about this difference in perspective? Like, how did you come to the conclusion that they had a different experience than you did when it came to
Eventually we did talk about, and I'm so thankful. I've got, I think, the world's most amazing family. We're not perfect, but we are. I love them. So one of the things that happened in recovery, Mom was just a rock. She was there very consistently. And then my siblings were working. My sister lives in Austin. And so when they had time, they would either stay in the evening with me or something like that. And so I would have one-on-one time with family. And we talk about fun stuff, get my mind off, the hospital and things that were happening as I was in that immediate phase of recovery. But also kind of talk about some of the things that happened. One of my favorite stories that I talk about is my mom shares my reaction to an MRI. She tried to tell them that they probably need to sedate me because even though I wasn't conscious, I guess there's levels to consciousness. My mom was like, I think y'all need to sedate her. They thought that I would be okay. And the MRI machine, for the listeners, if you've ever been through it, I guess it emits this kind of pulsing sound, which greatly annoyed me. And I wouldn't stay still. The nurse tried to get me to stay still, and I punched the nurse. This is all while I'm, unconscious. I have no memory of it. And I promise you, regular Lexie would not punch you. But apparently,
she'd warn you first.
She would certainly think about it. She would absolutely, unequivocally think about it. Continue to pray for her. But yeah, so there are experiences like that they had as far as just navigating through something like this. They figured it out.
I don't think I knew about the punching story. I don't recall this. I don't recall you sharing that. Okay. So let's keep moving then. So you had obviously this experience. You were unconscious for about a week. Then you start coming to, and everything moves from there. So what happens now after this? After you're stabilized and go back home? Tell us a little bit about the journey then.
That, believe it or not, is the heavy part of the journey. So once I become conscious, then the neurologists and others start to see there are some deficits. So the best way to think of it is kind of blind spots in my brain. There were some connections that had previously been there that it got disconnected. There was certainly kidney damage, heart damage, all the things that happen when your blood pressure is severely elevated. One of the stories I tell, one of my dearest, bestest friends, actually of about 30 years, was in the hospital room when the therapist came in to do the first neurological kind of, not exam, but just to see where I was at. So this particular test, what they do is they give you a blank sheet of paper and they ask you to draw a clock. And I knew enough to draw a clock and then to draw 1 o'clock on that clock. I knew enough to draw a circle, and then my brain froze. I could not think of how to draw 1 o'clock. The other tests that they would do is you would have these line of letters that you would have to read. It wouldn't be words, it'd be letters. And it's like I could get to about 3 or 5 of the letters, and then I would draw a blank. And so anyway, we could see that there were all these, kind of spots or things that had happened in my brain. As a result, it really affected me socially. So my vocabulary stayed pretty consistent. People will tell you I still sounded the way I sound right now, but I definitely started to withdraw from people because those neural connections weren't happening. It was taking so long for me to remember names, to remember all sorts of stuff. So now not only do I have the physical thing that's happening, I've got the social, emotional withdrawal that's starting to happen. I couldn't walk when I first, and I'll never forget the nurse. She definitely felt like I probably would never really walk correctly again. And so it's just you start to get a picture of what the landscape may look like for Lexie. So yeah, that was the tough part of the journey.
And how did you and how did your family decide to navigate all of those things that were happening, right? This road to recovery.
Sure. So a couple of things. So obviously the immediate is, okay, figure out what the medications or whatever needs to be in order to manage the blood pressure, the heart, kidneys, all of that good stuff. Get all the doctors lined up, start to manage the team of doctors going forward. So that was the first step. After that, when I came home, I kind of needed babysitters. I lovingly call everybody that would come and stay with me. My mom needed to get back to work. And it's a really interesting thing. I tell people when you experience a physical trauma like this, it not only affects you physically, it affects you emotionally, it affects you spiritually. And the pathway to healing has to include not only the physical, but it also has to include the emotional and the spiritual. And so for me, I was so blessed. One of my babysitters actually has lived across the street from my family for years, for I want to say about 35 years. She actually spent the majority of the time with me, and she has a therapy background. So when she'd be with me, Miss Moxley and I would talk, we'd catch up, but then also she would talk about, okay, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? You know, are you wrestling with, why did this happen to me? And it's not so much, it was the exercise of having someone have those types of conversations with me, but it was also kind of what it then caused me to do internally in my thinking. And so that was really important. The other thing that I talk about, I have no stock in this company, but it's called Lumosity. This was my mom's idea. This company, I think, absolutely saved my life. I promise you I have no interest in it, but I will extol its virtues for the rest of my life. Lumosity is brain games. So it makes, it turns exercises around memory, around spatial things, around peripheral vision into games. And I would literally spend about 2 or 3 hours doing those games on the computer, and it assesses where you're at, and then it shows you progress. And it's one of those things that help to really rebuild or reconnect some of those neural pathways that needed to be connected. I will forever and always be thankful to Lumosity and companies like that that recognize the complexity of the brain and then find technology in order to help us navigate, expand, make better, improve, et cetera. I think it's amazing.
Wow. Well, thank you for that plug for Lumosity, although you have no stake whatsoever. If Lumosity wants to give me a free membership, I'm open to it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because you did turn me on to it. You did turn me on to it. I had the benefit, the blessing of being able to be one of your babysitters for short periods of time.
Yes.
I called it babysitting, but I know you're not for sure. Yeah. But you said something that was really interesting about the experience of having those conversations, like with your neighbor, and how it impacted your thinking. So can you talk to us about that? Right? Because I think it's one thing to have someone around to help you, make sure you have your medication, and here, let me help you get this. But it sounds like for you, there was something equally important in having someone just help you have a conversation about what was the experience doing for you. So what did that conversation do for you?
Sure. So I'm an introvert. When I say that, for me, what that looks like is when I process my emotions, I don't process them outwardly. I'm thinking through, what did I think? What did I feel? What did they say? How did I react? You know, that's the kind of processing that I do. And so what Miss Moxley allowed me to do is she asked questions that honestly my brain wasn't necessarily at that space to question, but she asked the question and then gave me space to ponder. Because at that time, it's not like I was a quick thinker. It's not like I could formulate a very clear, well thought out response. It took time. And so that's kind of what it looked like. I mean, she may be able to give, honestly, a better response to that question, because it could be we sat in silence for a while I thought about things, but she would allow the space for that to happen. And for me, that's what I needed. I didn't necessarily need a lot. In fact, a lot of sensory input, whether it was TV, people, conversations, kind of made me draw in. It did not make me come out. And what needed to happen was for me to do the things necessary for me to come out again.
No, that's huge. And yeah, part of it I think has to do with personality type, right? So being introverted versus extroverted. Extroverted have the preference of thinking through out loud. Perhaps there's a little bit more engagement. But it sounds like particularly in your case, because all of, your being was so sensitized, right, in this process of healing, that particularly then it does require a lot more patience. It requires a lot more, introspection, right, reflection. So there's some big things. Imagine also as you're healing your brain requires so many repetitions of things before it starts to reconnect those neural pathways. Okay, so let's keep walking through this now. So now you're in the road to recovery, so to speak. Your emotional, your spiritual, your physical is on the mend. So what happens next?
I was like, I need to make some money. Not just make money. That's kind of a joke, but it was about, okay, now that this has happened, I needed to reconnect with my why. I will be forever grateful and thankful to my younger brother in the hospital. One of the times he came one evening and stayed throughout the evening, and we joked and laughed, but at one point he asked me a question. He said, Lexie, this is a big thing that has happened. He said, you're on the path to recovery. What do you feel like, what do you feel like the outcome of this is? Like, what do you feel like you want to be on the other side of this? And I had a little bit of an answer, because I had been certainly wondering that same thing. But what it really provoked is this thought of, okay, why did this happen to me? And not in the sense of an angry why, but how do I use this as a floor to the next place or next thing or next person that God wants me to be? How do I learn the lessons that I need to learn, put in place the things that need to be put in place, and then continue to grow and transform as a woman? And so it was that conversation that then kind of catapulted me into, okay, what do I want to be professionally? Who do I want to be as a woman? How do I want to show up in the relationships that I am in? And so that's kind of, where really the transformation after the transformation, that's kind of the sweet spot of where I'm at right now. And I love it.
Yeah. So just to give us some context, what was the pre-stroke Lexie? What was she all about? What is it that she wanted to do? How was she engaged socially? And then post-stroke Lexie, can you share some of the distinctions?
I can. Well, and I will say this. One of the, my mom is going to hate me for using this terminology, but one of the bargains I made with God, I was like, God, I'll do what you want me to do. But there are some aspects of Lexie that I really liked. And I want to continue being someone who loves life, who laughs, who goes hard after the things that are important to her. I'm just asking that you maybe speak a little louder when I need to rein something in. So pre-Lexie, I hope my friends would say that I love them well. I certainly love hanging out with them. Pre-Lexie, love my family. I probably maybe didn't be with them, show up for them as much as I should have. I can tell you, if you read my Facebook post, you'll see, there were financial challenges. There were things that I did not take care of in my life. I was a person when things got challenging. Sometimes I would bury my head in the sand and just not take care of things. And so that's what I did. And that everybody knows, burying your head in the sand, ignoring something does not make it go away at all. And so piled on top of the things that were happening as far as having this business and a really important client, having, some great things happen with family, underneath that, it's just a whole bunch of trash and stuff that needed to be taken care of. And so that's what pre-Lexie, looked like. Post-Lexie, there are some things, there are priorities that I've kind of set in place. It's not selfish, but I certainly prioritize myself, self-care, the things that I need to manage, take care of. And that can be a wide variety of things. That's the business of Lexie. So that's, that's taxes, that's rent, that's paying the bills. There's also the emotions of Lexie. Am I showing up for myself? Am I expressing myself in the way that I need to be expressed? And that's professional Lexie. Am I showing up for my job in a way that produces the income that I need in order to do the things that I want to do? Post-Lexie or post-stroke Lexie certainly prioritizes family after myself. And so it's hard to describe, but I just prioritize my family. And then after that, it becomes the friends, the relationships, the other things that are meaningful to me. So my priorities certainly got shifted around. I don't do as many friends things as I used to. Hopefully people can tell from my conversation friendships, those relationships are really important to me. But it's okay. My thing is, if I don't do it as much, that's okay. But when I do something, when I do connect with a friend, let's go deep, as deep as we can.
Mm-hmm. I've had that experience with you. So, yes, so you've been consistent there.
Yeah. That was her way of saying that I don't see Lexie as much.
But I think, it's mutual, right? Both of us have been, our friendship has evolved over the years. So, no, it wasn't meant as any kind, that's not shade or anything. I know we don't see you, Lexie. Not at all. But I do think that, as we all evolve, right, priorities shift. But I think particularly in your case, that there are some things that your emotional bank account needed to be filled by other things, it sounds like, right? That needed to take top priority. So that's kind of describing to us a little bit of the emotional part. Talk to us about the physical and the spiritual. Those are two elements that you said are also very important.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously physical has to be prioritized, and honestly, I'm still learning how to make sure I prioritize that. I say that because I am not a good medicine taker. I am learning how to be better about it. And part of managing physical Lexie is ensuring that she takes the medicine that really takes care of her blood pressure and heart. Part of that is also I am a huge proponent of getting outside and moving something. In fact, I need to add that hashtag to everything. And so what that looked like when the stroke, when I was in early post-stroke recovery, I started doing a lot of walking, eventually running. You can read this really amazing article that the Lakewood Advocate put out about a 10K that I ran a couple of years ago. Super cool article that they did. But my main thing now is get outside, move something, do something. And I say get outside because there's something about being in nature, being in a place where you're getting to breathe deeply and kind of disconnect from technology, from all sorts of inputs that really helps to bring clarity. And sometimes it's clarity around ideas for work. Sometimes it's clarity around relationships. It can be clarity around, your grocery shopping list. But it's still something I think that's important for each of us to do. And so, find that natural or that green space, in your community, in your city, and experience it. I mean, my prescription would be once a month. Just go outside and do it. And it doesn't have to be a long walk, but just do that as a way of jump-starting your brain and giving it the oxygen it needs in order to truly be productive. Nice.
So that's the physical. That's the post-stroke Lexie like vegetables and cooking as much as any more than pre?
That's aggressive. I know
it's aggressive.
You guys tried. No, I love vegetables. I am actually addicted to broccoli. I love broccoli.
Okay.
Post-stroke Lexie, actually, yes, I am much more vegetable friendly. We'll call it that. And so I eat way less red meat, actually. And so I'm a much more healthier diet. If for no other reason, I would caution against having a stroke because of the diet that they put you on. It is so restrictive that you feel like, let me just drink water. And so, yes, very much so. Much healthier. There's still room for growth, certainly. I know there are some folks out there that are like, Lexie, just become vegan or vegetarian or whatever. I'm sorry. I like a little bit of meat every once in a while. But, we keep it within reason.
Okay, good. And I think we have a vegetarian that's also live right now that might have something to say about that.
Yes, trust me, I understand. I completely understand.
Good. I'm not, but I'm just saying. Good. Okay, so that's kind of addressing the physical. Let's talk a little bit about the spiritual. What have you noticed there? Has there been any pre-post shift in there?
There has. It's interesting. So, it's not something that necessarily happens to everybody, but for me, I definitely had so many conversations with God about this whole journey. Like, certainly why? What am I supposed to learn? And just had lots and lots of questions. I can't say that I had answers to everything, but one of the biggest things or biggest conversations that God and I had around this was fear. For me, especially as I started recovery, fear was huge because there was so much unknown. What will I be? Will I be able to have a job? Will I be able to have relationships? Will I, what will my quality of life be? And the why question or the fear, the thing that came out of it, my conversation with God and with a dear friend, actually, she came up to Dallas when I was early in my recovery. She said there may be times where you have to do something afraid. And that particular phrase was huge for me at that time because I was not stepping out and doing things. I was just gripped by fear. And so it was in the process of that friend saying that, conversations with God about everything that was happening, that as I did small things, even though I was afraid, that started to kind of unlock the door. It unlocked the door to the possibilities of what I could look like after the stroke. It also unlocks the possibilities as far as what my relationships with people post-stroke could look like. And that was huge. I feel like I don't know if I'm answering your question very well as it relates to spirituality and the journey.
Well, it qualifies if in spirituality you have a conversation with God. I think that ties it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. And it's ongoing. It's an ongoing discussion.
Good, right?
Yeah.
And it's best that it's remote. It's a good remote conversation to have because the alternative would be like face-to-face. So I'm curious, what was it that you said fear, or you weren't stepping out? Give us an example of what you were afraid to do or afraid to experience, and then how that being afraid and doing it anyway helped.
So the stroke happened. Obviously, no one times a stroke very well. I had contracted to do a major event for the city that I live in around volunteerism. It was the first event of its kind. My stroke was in October. The event was middle of January. And so I've got this event coming up, and learning how to walk again, much less reconnect neural pathways. This event was incredibly important to me. Actually, no, this wasn't the first. This was the second year of doing this event. Was incredibly important to me. I did not want to cancel it at all. We had done a lot of work on it pre-stroke, and so I wanted it to move forward. That was very scary for me. I've got to work, I've got to walk, I've got to have conversations with people, including the mayor of my community. I've got to organize. I think we had about 30 to 50 nonprofits coming in, as well as people interested in volunteerism from all over our community. To say that I was scared, I don't even know how to put into words how fearful I was. Certainly, conventional wisdom would have been, Lexie, just cancel. But it was also, there is thankfulness in still going forward with it, because it created a milestone, or it created a pressure for me to kind of get some things in alignment and kind of work towards. I think that's the difficult thing about recovery, is you want to be able to go at your own pace, but there is something to be said also about creating good pressure that moves you forward.
Mm-hmm. I really love the fact that the moving through the fear part is something that you can, it sounds like it wasn't artificial. Obviously, it was already something that you had planned in this case of this event, but it also sounds like without it, you may not have bumped up against the things that you needed to that would help give you that push forward. And it sounds like, after that conversation about your purpose and what you're here to do and what you're here to learn, that there's a little bit of the pushing that needed to happen in order for that to be realized.
Unequivocally.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I mean, there are ways that word fear can be negative. So I don't describe it always as a positive word. But I think in that particular instance, it was definitely something that fear was a barrier that I needed to press through. And I needed to kind of figure out how to understand this kind of concept that you can be afraid, but you can't allow that fear to overtake you or to keep you from the thing that honestly is your destiny, is your calling.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it.
What a fascinating journey. I can't believe it's been 5 years. Yeah, I can't.
You and me both. You and me both.
I do remember that there were some, even you had I don't know what I would call that, after New Year's.
We had an episode. We had to be a part of.
Yeah, and you relinquished control, if you will, and we had an opportunity to engage, like full on, take her to the hospital emergency room moment. And,
totally.
So I've witnessed some of the journey that you've been on, and man, I'm so thoroughly impressed by not only I was impressed with the pre-stroke Lexie, but even more so the Lexie 2.0 that's come out of it, and just the work that you've done and throughout the journey. I remember there was a time when you didn't even refer to what happened as a stroke. even the language around it has you know, shifted. Like all the work that you've done, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, around moving forward, moving towards the things. And I can also hear, you know, there's so many instances that you shared the level of vulnerability that it required for you to heal. I can imagine there's so many people who are experiencing all sorts of challenges with, you know, health and letting people in, you know, their world so that they could take care of the practical matters of life, but also the emotional matters of, like, what do I do with this? How do I work through this? And then also the spiritual matters of being able to, like, hear what, what God or the universe or whatever source one looks to for that guidance. So the why becomes a stronger push, right, to continue living. So as we start to wrap up, what is the 3.0 Lexie looking forward to now? So now our 2.0 is gone, it's done, right? It's set. What's the next iteration hold for you?
Yeah, great question. I feel like I'm on this journey or in this sweet spot of figuring out and defining what that looks like. So it's really, really exciting for me. And that usually happens around this time of year. Still looking to see what that looks like. I am so privileged to be able doing what I love with people that I love in a community that I love. So I'm very focused on the assignment that I have before me in work and in life. And I feel like as I do that and as I bring a level of excellence to that work, that whatever Lexie 3.0 was supposed to look like will be revealed. My big thing is just keeping my eyes open to the relationships and opportunities that God brings my way, and not being afraid to look and see if something is for me, and then also not being afraid to say, nope, that's not for me, and just enjoying the journey, truly. That's a quote from my mom, enjoying the journey.
Enjoying the journey. Oh, love that. And, you know, there's no coincidence that when we talk about the show, it's called Time to Come Alive, precisely because it's part of the journey. The journey is what brings us to life. When we're connected, like you just described, and you're able to see, like, you know what, I know that I need to just keep my eyes open, see what's coming, and say yes to what has meaning and no to the things that don't. That's, you know, what better advice is there to get? Wow. Lexie, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and in celebration. I mean, I think that's the only word that's appropriate. In celebration of your 5 years, all the things that have come out of it, the relationships that you've gained, the newfound wisdom and excellence that you now have in the experience in your life, and then, you know, the friendships that you've developed, all the relationships that you have been impacting and have impacted as a result of this evolution, this transformation that you've undergone. Oh, it's phenomenal. Thank you so much for joining us. And those of you who have been listening, man, if you want to get a hold of this woman, Lexie, I'll tag you on the show notes, so that way people can have, you know, they'll Instagram you or Facebook or whatever is appropriate.
LinkedIn,
you can connect.
Everything.
Yes. And also, I want to make sure that we have the article. So if you have a link to the article that you mentioned, the 10K article, it sounds like that could be also really interesting for people to read. I'll attach that as well. So excellent. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's been a fantastic conversation, as usual, with phenomenal people. And so you know, because next week here in the U.S. is Thanksgiving, we're not going to have the Tuesday show. There's going to be just too much going on. But I didn't want to take that moment for granted. So this afternoon, we're actually having a special edition of Time to Come Alive with Gail Blair, who's an intuitive chef, and we're going to be talking about how the soul gets fed. So not only is Thanksgiving a time for family and gathering, but also there's something interaction with the foods that we eat and the way in which we consume it that she'll talk to. So if you'd like to join us at 2:30 Central Time live here on Facebook Live for that, please do so. I think you'll really enjoy the conversation. Otherwise, those of you who are subscribed, if you're not subscribed, do so now. you'll see this on, you'll get this in your mailbox on Tuesday, next Tuesday, November 23rd, not 23rd, I believe it is. No, not 23rd. What day is that? Next Tuesday, in any case. And last thing I want to mention, this coming Saturday, actually this Saturday is November 23rd, I have a workshop. So those of you who are in the Plano, Texas area or the Dallas area, please feel free to join. It's a free workshop at the Holistic Festival of Life and Wellness. And we'll be talking about how to create your circle of influencers. So those of you who, like Lexie, are all about building effective relationships, but perhaps are struggling with which relationships to say yes to or no to, or how to continue to connect with people, you want to be there. It's a free workshop at 4 p.m. on Saturday, November 23rd. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Lexie, once again, thanks to you. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.